I think, self-care is problematic because I think in a lot of ways as women, we follow these like outdated systems. And when they don't work, we see ourselves as a failure. I think we're really good as women at creating guilt and shame and being like, I failed. I messed up. What's wrong with me?
Hey, this is Ari. Welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. With me in this episode is Dr. Melissa Saunders, who is the host of the Be Inspired Mama podcast, a community for women seeking a deeper connection with themselves and each other. Known for her authentic and practical approach, she offers advice that resonates with the soul's desire for self-synchronization and fulfillment. Melissa's mission is to help women rediscover a love for their lives, focusing on who they are rather than defining themselves by a to-do list. She's also a distinguished chiropractor specializing in prenatal, postpartum, and pediatric care, and she's expanded her work from the treatment room to the global platform. Her passion for empowering women to reconnect with themselves has led her to create Best Friends Book Nook, an online book club that cultivates personal growth and meaningful discussions, and The Beehive, a supportive community for women on their journey of self-discovery. Through Be Inspired Mama, she shares free, easily applicable tools via her podcast and YouTube channel, fostering community and reminding women of the power found in collective support and self-reconnection. So now let's get into this conversation with Dr. Saunders. This is one that I enjoyed personally a lot. I think the work that she does is absolutely wonderful. And I think that if you are a woman and if you are a mother especially, I think that you're going to get a lot of value from this conversation. Enjoy. And if you're a man, share it with the women in your life that you love. Dr. Saunders, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ari. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So first of all, tell people a little about your background and how you came to do the work that you now do.
Sure. Yeah. So many layers to that, and I'll keep it as simple as possible, and then we can dive into whatever you feel is best. But I'm trained as a chiropractor. I have like a very holistic lens on the body. I trust the body. I know the miracles that the body performs. Um, I'm a mom of three. My husband is a chiropractor, so very holistic family. I'm naturally like a busy body. I think like a lot of typical women, right? We're like doing all the things these days. And I got really sick, right? So I got really sick and it completely changed the trajectory of my life. And we can definitely talk about that. But it basically pivoted my lines on self-care. And I think this is such an important conversation for any woman out there who's maybe, doing all the things, right? Has the epically long to-do list and maybe anchors herself within that sense of productivity. And, self-care tends to be just another to-do item on our list. And so when I got sick, I felt like I was doing everything right. I come from a biohacking family. It's like now we can say that and everyone knows what we're talking about. So I felt like I was doing everything right. I was fasting, I was working out, I was flipping tires at CrossFit at 5 a.m. I had a power hour every morning, raising our three kids, homeschooling our three kids, running the practice. And I got sick with Lyme and
Mm,
mold toxicity. And so my co-infections were meningitis and encephalitis.
mm,
And I think looking back, if it wasn't Lyme and mold toxicity, it was going to be some other form of dis-ease. My body had been giving me these signals for a long time that what I was doing wasn't working. I think a lot of us women get those signals and they come in whispers, right? So it's like that little whisper that's like, I'm tired, I can't do this, but we feel like we have to, so we keep pushing. Or I just need a break, I need to put my feet up. I can't, people need me, right? And so then what happens is if we don't listen to the whispers, they turn into the scream. And so for me, my scream was Lyme and molds. But I think for a lot of people, the scream can be a variety of things. It can be chronic fatigue, it can be brain fog, it can be like burnout, fried, snapping at your family. And so, I always want to make sure to keep my story general enough that it doesn't weed out someone who maybe didn't have Lyme or mold, because I think this story really speaks to every woman. And the challenge that we all experience is like, we hear these mantras, right? These like well-meaning mantras of put your oxygen mask on first before serving others, or you've got to fill your bucket first before you take care of your loved ones, or like my favorite, it takes a village and ask for help. It's like, one, where do we find our village? We're all separated, we're all busy. Who do we ask for help? All of our sisters are drowning as well. And so I realized I needed to create, literally, I aimed to create a movement of swapping the word self-care for self-connection. And it changes the game on everything because it switches it from a to-do to who we be. And it becomes a lot more free, like literally freedom, but also it's free. Like all the tools I use are free. Um, it's realistic in our busy lives, and life becomes so much more playful. I feel like a little kid, and I'm 43. Like I'm having more fun in my life now than I ever have. And I'm the healthiest version I've ever been.
Beautiful. I love that. So, why is self-care problematic and why did you switch it to self-connection?
Yeah, I think, self-care is problematic because I think in a lot of ways as women, we follow these like outdated systems. And when they don't work, we see ourselves as a failure. I think we're really good as women at creating guilt and shame and being like, I failed. I messed up. What's wrong with me? And I think the traditional model of self-care is one of those systems that does that. And what I mean by that, Ari, is like, when I was in the thick of career and seeing patients in the office and before my day at work and at the end of my day at work, I'm with our family, right? And so I hear this phrase, every patient would tell me like, be sure you take care of yourself or you can't take care of your kids. I'm like, okay, how do I do that? Well, self-care. Okay, what is self-care? And anything I could think of that's self-care is like a massage, a pedicure, a workout, right? They're like these 1 hour blocks of time that are amazing. I mean, they're still some of my favorite things to do. But like either I'm now spending an extra hour outside of the office away from my family to do something that I'm gonna like judge myself for being selfish for, or I don't have time because I need to get back to my family. So I'm gonna judge myself for like, why are these other women so good at fitting it all in and I can't? Right. And so it just becomes this like added pressure because we've looked at self-care as a to-do. Like I said at the beginning, it's just yet another thing to do rather than focusing on a be, right? And there's a lot we could go down with that, but I also just want to say, if we don't first master the self-connection, like I would finally, duck out, like schedule the massage or whatever at the end of the week, finally get to Sunday, I can go do my massage. Well, if I wasn't first working on who I be anyway, the reality is I lay on that massage table and I do mom math, right? Or woman math. It's like instead of blissing out, I'm like, okay, I need to go here, then I need to do this, then I need to do that. Like I'm still running the same wiring and patterns. Yeah, maybe I did this 1 hour escape from my life, but then I'm dropping right back into my life with perhaps a bit of a relaxed nervous system, but no tool that I have with me for the moments when like I actually need the self-care the most, whether it's like we're running out the door and my youngest one throws a tantrum, right? Like that's when I need the tool. Or I'm late for work and there's traffic and I spill my coffee and someone cuts me off. Like that's where I need the tool. I can't be like, oh, okay, this is all a crazy week, but it'll be fine Sunday when I get on the massage table. Like I needed those daily dips of connection so that at the end of the day, I wasn't like a frazzle dazzle crazy woman. I could somehow get it all done, but have these little micro moments of peace so that at the end of the day, I was like, wow, I did it all. And like, I'm pretty chill. I'm pretty good for my husband. Like I'm able to connect with him in present time. I'm able to truly be with my children because I can truly be with myself. It's like having that ability to go from go, go, go mode to being, right?
Mm,
And I think that is like one of the most important skills that we as men, women, as human beings, instead of human doings, that we can acquire.
mm. I want to go a little bit big picture, a little meta here for a second, because I think everything you're describing is needs to be understood in a context. And I think that most of us don't understand the context that we're in appropriately. I'm going to be maybe slightly long-winded here, and you can riff off it however you like. One example of this is like if you take little, young children, especially young boys. Let's say you take a 6 or an 8 year old or a 10-year old boy, and you put them at a desk inside of a classroom and you ask them to sit still for many hours of the day, you might find that it's very, very difficult for many of them. And hence we have the massively increasing prevalence of ADHD. And we then seek to solve this by drugging these children to resolve their disorder, quote unquote. But if we don't understand the context where human beings weren't evolved for young boys to sit at a desk all day, young boys especially, this is true of girls too, but ADHD is much more common in boys. If we don't understand that context, we are inclined to see this as a disorder. If we understand the context of how we have evolved and we give those young boys ample opportunity to run around and play and use their physical bodies, you might find that disorder disappears, right? I've been reading an interesting book, really interesting book lately. It's called Civilized to Death, and it basically dismantles a lot of the narratives and the mythology that we all grow up with in the modern world of all of our, sort of the story of civilizational progress and how we're so much better off than any of the humans of the past. And in fact, it basically paints a picture where we modern humans are much less healthy and much less happy than our forager or hunter-gatherer ancestors tens of thousands of years ago. And that, much of this mythology of progress is actually nonsense, is truly a mythology. And one of the other interesting things, sort of coinciding with this reading of this book that I've been doing lately, is listening to a lot of podcasts on AI, from AI experts talking about the future of what the world looks like, essentially when humans are no longer necessary for to work jobs, for governments, for economies to function and to thrive. And sort of they're envisioning this landscape of like, okay, humans no longer have to have jobs to work. What do you do with all your time? Well, maybe you just sort of hang out and you have leisure and you find what's called artificial purpose. Find things to do with your day that feel meaningful to you, but are not actually meaningful because they don't serve any outward objective purpose. And it's really interesting to just see these kind of two things coinciding, this kind of exploration of hunter-gatherer life when we didn't have so much demands on us constantly, when there was much more leisure time, as well as this future utopia, AI-driven thing where human work is now obsolete, and now we're back in this state of like, all right, we mostly can just sort of hang out. But right now, this phase of human life is this sort of in between the peak of capitalistic free market, like everybody needs to grind and hustle and work hard to make money. And we're in this, part of what you were describing is this state where so many women are just burnt out. There's just too much to do. Everybody's overwhelmed. Everybody's isolated. We're not in communities. We're all just drowning in our to-do lists. And we don't even have time to get a workout in or a 15-minute meditation or things like that. Anyway, I'm just trying to paint a context here of like this phase of human history that we're in, so that people can start to understand their life in this bigger historical context of our species. Feel free to riff on that however you'd like.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love this. So it's really interesting because, I think doomsday news sells, right? So it's like all the problems of AI and what's going to happen with that. And they're going to take over our jobs and all these things. And, I see this opportunity that we could have there, and it's to get back to the arts and
Hmm.
it's to get back to creation if we choose to.
Hmm.
And I think one of the biggest problems here that's so relevant to this conversation and what you brought up is that yes, we are all busy, but I think the problem isn't that we are all busy. I think that's the top of the iceberg, and the real issue underneath is that we don't know what to do with ourselves if we're not.
Mm.
And I think it's no coincidence that the word busyness and business are very similar,
Hmm.
right? It can be so easy to say, I don't have any time. And then at least I'll speak from a woman's perspective. I'm curious from a man. But the reality is we have pockets of, even if it's a couple minutes here and there, but we fill those with distraction, which has become really easy in the digital age, right?
Hmm.
I've got a minute. Let me just take this opportunity to get caught up. So I hop on the phone and scroll the emails, right? Or check social media or check the news if people are into the news. It's a distraction. And I think it feels like safety to a lot of people because the reality is the alternative is being with yourself, and that's the unknown, that's the unfamiliar, right? Because we're not used to it. And we fear what's unfamiliar, literally from a neurological perspective. Our amygdala, part of our brain, it's like survival instinct, will pull us out of the unfamiliar. And so that's really important because I think in order to have this like utopia that we could potentially step into on the other side of AI, is we first have to be able to get to understand what is it that we know and love? What is it that we want? Right? Like if you sit down a lot of women and you're like, what do you want? Like if you could just have some time, if you weren't so busy, like what do you desire? What do you want? What would you do? What would light you up? What would make you happy? I'd be willing to bet probably like 8 or 9 out of 10 women would have no idea.
Mm.
Like no one's asked us that, right?
Well, that's the thing, when you meet somebody new, it's like, what's one of the first questions you ask them? It's like, well, what do you
What do you
do?
do?
What do you do
Yeah.
for a living, right? And our cultural context is we've all been brought up in this this story that what we do is of utmost importance, and we're sort of raised to be good little worker bees to contribute to society. And so what we do every day becomes central to our identity.
Right. And you think about the energy exchange when you ask someone that question, right? If we just like zoomed out and only saw body language, there's probably like a slump. Whereas if you ask someone, we should change this, Ari, we'll start this. What lights you up?
Mm.
Right? Like to see
Hmm.
someone step into that. What lights you up? Like, I mean, for me, that's one of the things I've gotten most clear on in the last 2 years. Gymnastics, acro, handstands, skateboarding, nature. Like, you have an hour? I'll tell you all the things that light me up. But that was like the biggest change for me is like spending time with myself to get to discover that again.
Hmm.
Right? Because then we start to fill those pockets of time with those things
Hmm.
instead of the numbness, instead of the distraction. But there's a journey there. There's like a gap that at least for women, like we need tools. I call them anchor tools because if I ask some woman, you don't know what you want, okay, let's like sit with yourself until you figure that out. Like that's not going to work because she's going to sit down to sit with herself and she's going to think about the grocery list or the laundry list or the emails, right? So there's like a process that I walk women through, but just getting back to your bigger conversation, it's like, and I'd be curious what you would think like for men in that transition, like can you see today's man dipping into that ability to have more time and space and filling it with healthy things? I almost worry like we can look at COVID and we can look at a time where there was less going on. And I feel like people either chose to go inward, like go all into the pain and like sit with it. And, I don't have work to distract me. And I think a lot of relationships changed during COVID. We're seeing like a major expansion after COVID for the people that chose to go in. It's like a heartbeat, like with every contraction, with every inward, there's an expansion.
Mm.
Or you saw a lot of people that were like, okay, I don't have work to distract me. I don't like my life. I don't like my relationship, but I don't know what to do. So I'm going to drink it away. I'm going to do drugs. Like we saw a lot of alcohol. We saw a lot of like numbness and disconnecting. And so, I worry a little bit about people being in the same state of human doing and distraction and then stepping into the world of AI where they have more time.
Yeah. There's a really interesting like cultural context to this as well, because I've spent a lot of the last 4 years in Costa Rica, and when you spend a chunk of time outside of the United States, it kind of, and you come back to the United States, you sort of get a different perspective on what's going on here. But it's really striking to me to look. So you in a way, you like I'm American. I was raised here, but in a way, I've traveled so much in my life and spent so much in, especially in recent years, outside of the United States, that I'm almost coming back and looking at it with fresh eyes and kind of
Mm.
seeing it more as an outsider would see it to some degree. Um, and I see this like just obsession with money and materialism and obsession with um, more,
Yeah.
just like nothing is ever enough. It's just like this constant hunger for more. And I contrast it with, sometimes you go to less developed countries, or undeveloped countries, and you look at you like I observe how, let's say, guys my age are what they do with their time and how they think there as compared to guys my age here. And a lot of them are sort of just hanging out. Like, it's just like, yeah, we hang out, surf, you know, talk to my friends, sit around, shoot the shit, have fun conversation, have some laughs, and that's a day, you know?
Mhm.
And here it's like, go, go, go. I gotta, have every minute of my day grinding and hustling so that I can scale my business and make more money and, buy my house and buy this car and buy this thing and get the new iPhone. And I think when I originally witnessed that going to a lot of those countries, I sort of saw it as an American with a lot of judgment and was like, oh, like what are you guys doing with your time? Like, really, you're going to waste your whole day like that? And now I'm actually having somewhat of a different take on it, where I'm like, actually, these people are in general a lot happier.
Yeah.
And doesn't it make sense? Like, if I can get over a lot of my cultural narratives about hustling to make a contribution and make money and, all this stuff, and doesn't it make sense to, at the end of the day, like have spent your life actually being happy and, with other human beings having fun and with leisure time, as opposed to just in this constant pursuit of working and busyness to get more?
Yeah. I mean, we travel a lot too, and I hear exactly what you're saying. We've spent some time in Costa Rica, a lot of time in Hawaii. And, those people are human beings. They're not building their day on what they do. And there's a few common elements that I saw in any of those areas where we were spending time. And it's connection, it's community, it's nature, and it's being really tapped into having fun and playing.
Hmm.
Right? I was curious if you would say surfing because that's in my mind what I picture
Yes.
in these areas. And if you look at like the blue zone studies where these cultures, there's pockets of high numbers of people who live to at least 100 years old. And so of course, we put the US stamp on that and we're like, okay, what are they doing? What are
Hmm.
all these people doing so that we can recreate that? They're being. They have a high sense of community and gathering and conversation. And, some of these people are smoking and drinking. And like, there wasn't one thing that like they're all living a super healthy life. They're in moderation. They're taking time to do what they love and they're being with people. And so, when I talk about like these anchor tools, they're gateways to getting back to that place because the reality is here in the US, we're very much like on this hamster wheel of doing.
Hmm.
And so for the people who don't get to maybe travel and like spend time in these pockets and almost like absorb it through osmosis, right? Like what is the system? What is the action step? Because I feel like that's what humans in our country need. Like, okay, how do I get from here to there? What do I do? Right? It's those pillars. It's self-connection, it's community, it's getting in nature. I mean, it's the ultimate tool. Right. And I think this is a really important conversation, at least in the circles I hang out. I don't know if you do, but like just going back to the biohacking thing, it's like the pendulum is swinging so far one way. And there's these tools that are all coming up that are incredible health tools, like the red light, obviously, huge fan, hyperbarics, methylene blue, all the things I use and love. But like, let's not now just put these external tools and these other devices and these other things outside of us at more of a power than what we have inside, right? It's
Hmm.
who we be and it's how we spend that time. It's because what I'm seeing is when you take like these biohack tools that replicate nature, have the ability to change us, and you expose it to someone who's a human doing. Right now, it's like I've got the tracker on and the aura, and like I know I didn't sleep good because that's what my tracker says, and so I'm gonna do all these things. Like, how about we just get back to like listening to our bodies, right?
Hmm.
And listening to that voice because that voice will guide you. It'll be like, this isn't working. I don't feel good around this circle of people. I feel really amazing around these people. I feel great when I take 5 minutes between Zooms and get outside. I don't know why, but it feels great. So we
Hmm.
do it, right?
You just reminded me of a book that I read when I was in my PhD program in clinical psychology. I read a book that ironically led to me not wanting to pursue a career in clinical psychology. And it was actually a book. It's ironic because the book was prescribed as part of the reading for the curriculum of the school. And it was a book called Constructing America, Constructing the Self by Philip Cushman. And it's not a well-known book. It's a more scholarly book, but it's absolutely profound, and it basically traces the history of the entire field of clinical psychology. So, like, where did this idea of psychotherapy even come from? Why did it originate? What were the conditions that led to the emergence of this? And basically, he traces this to post World War One, post World War Two in particular. There were some rumblings of it prior to that, but the original thing that led to the origins of this was essentially the loss of tribe, the loss of community among humans. And as a result of this fundamental loss of being connected to a family, a tribe around us. We've had many shifts in the modern world and technological shifts. Even the advent of like airplanes has facilitated a situation where immediate family members, parents and children, brothers and sisters, are no longer separate, are no longer together like they were for most of human evolution, right? It's very common for people to live in different cities. So not only the dissolution of community and tribe, but even immediate nuclear families are no longer even living in the same city. So we have this massive loss of community and social connection. And what came out of that was this sort of like hole in all of us, this void where we constantly feel like something is missing from our lives. We're not complete. We're not like there's some sort of vague sense of lack. And what has emerged from that is the whole field of materialism, of consumerism, feeds on that void, right? It's like meant to leverage this sense of lack in us that, oh, if only you buy this new iPhone, if you get the latest technology, if you get the latest car, this new thing, that new thing, this fancy house and two Ferraris, then you'll finally feel wonderful and happy and complete. And the origins of psychotherapy itself formed as a result of this sort of core wound in all of us living in the modern world, that psychotherapy emerged to deal with the mental health problems that emerge from this fundamental lack and loss of community and tribe. And anyway, I thought that that connects with everything that you were describing there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think when we get down to most people's most negative thought, right? Like it's like I'm not a good chiropractor. Okay, what does that mean? Why is that scary? Or I'm not a good mom, the thoughts that come up in the night. What does that mean? What's like the threat of that? Whatever your most negative thoughts are in the day or in general in your life, we can boil those down to a fear of being separate, right? That separation from oneness that we all experienced at one point, whether we remember it or not, in the womb or before we came here in human form. And I loved that you mentioned the tribes. And I apologize, I don't know exactly the community that this came from, but I had read at some point, in a lot of these underdeveloped countries, they're so beyond, they're so much better than we are here. That, when a baby is born, there's a song that's played in the community, and that song becomes that person's song. And so anytime that person in the tribe maybe like falls short and isn't, following like the values of the tribe and slips out of line, they don't discipline them. It like makes me want to cry. I think this is so beautiful. They play their song and it reminds them of who they are, and I think that's so beautiful because I think that's what your family and your connection does. Your community, your tribe, your village. It reminds you of who you are. And so we live in a world where it's like we have this hole, this lack, and companies do a really good job of targeting their marketing to fill that hole and to fill that void. And so we just accumulate. This is where my chiropractic lens comes on. Like as a chiropractor, I didn't like create health in anyone. I just get rid of the stuff on the outside that they've accumulated to get them back to who they are.
Mm,
And I think that's the game here. It's like remembering who you are before the world told you who to be. Because we're perfect, we're whole, we're miracles, and we just forget, right? But there's nothing on the outside that's going to change that. And I had like a huge eye opening the first time we spent a chunk of time in Hawaii. I was on the beach at North Shore, literally watching the World Surf Competition. Like we had a house and we were treating all the best surfers in the world, the athletes. They're just coming through our home. I'm literally in one of the most beautiful places. And it was like the 2 week mark. And I think you can go on vacation and like escape for like a week, right? It's like bliss and you're on vacation and you forget about your problems or whatever. And I hit this point of 2 weeks and I was like, some negative thoughts were coming up, like some crap. And I sat on the beach and I was like, holy shit, I came with me on vacation. And what I realized in that place was like, I got to fix who I am. Like, I got to be happier being with myself because it doesn't matter where you drop someone. You could put them in the most beautiful place. You could, you could take someone who has like this dream of having the best car, the hottest wife, the best house, and they could get all those things. But if that lack is there, it's not going to matter, right?
mhm,
You just keep going for bigger and better. And it was that moment on the North Shore of Oahu that I was like, I got some work to do because if I can't sit in this place and be blissed out, like it's me. Like I
mm,
got to work on me. And it was really eye-opening and I'm so glad I chose to go inward because it helped me fill that void, right? It helped me figure that out. And I will say you got to sit through some stuff, right? But you can't go around it. You got to go through it. And what's on the other side is so beautiful and so worth it. And like it doesn't have to be as scary as I think we make it out to be.
mm. What I'm curious to hear a little more detail on how that journey was for you. What were some of the sort of the core things that you had to deal with internally to make that transition?
Yeah, I mean, I think from like a zoomed out perspective, it's, to keep it general, like shadow work, right? So it's like all the thoughts that come up, all the things that we experience throughout our days. Maybe it's like feelings of anger or sadness or resentment or envy. And I think again, as women, we've done such a quote unquote good job of learning how to stuff it back down, how to distract ourselves out, right? And be like, it's okay. I don't want to feel angry, so I'm gonna have a good coffee, or I'm gonna go for a run, or I'm gonna play on social media and have a dopamine hit and distract myself out. It was like creating the awareness that I was trying to push a beach ball down under the water and it was just going to come up and hit me at some point where I didn't know it, right? So other cultures call these samskaras. It's these emotions hang out in our body and they're always there. And so it just started for me as like a willingness. If I felt sad, like having a conversation with myself, why am I sad? What is this about? Um, in the day to day, it looked like just anchoring some time with myself in the morning in red light, like keeping the lights dim and staying in that subconscious dreamlike state and journaling. To me, I didn't know how to journal for so long that I avoided it. And I just started, I was like, let me just, whatever's coming up, let me literally write and like ask myself questions and just have stream of thought and like get to know myself again. And what was really beautiful, I give the analogy of our feelings being like a toddler, right? So, like, if a toddler is sad or angry or upset, like, they don't need us to fix it. They just need us to provide space to be with them, to see them, to not reject them, right? To love them in any state. And so I just sat with these emotions and like I learned so much about what I wanted and what I didn't want in my life anymore. And then I could start to take steps to create that or get rid of it. So it was a lot easier than I assumed it to be. But that was like the big thing. It was just spending time in the morning without blasting myself with blue and white light first, because that pulls you right into like beta brainwaves, like get stuff done, and just listening and creating a conversation with myself. And now it's what I do all the time. If I'm feeling any feelings that I don't like, I'll literally put my hand on my heart and I'm like, what is it about this that isn't working? Or what is it that I need right now? And you start to hear your voice again. And it's the most beautiful thing because she's got all the answers for me.
What if somebody's listening to this and they're sort of hearing you describe this distinction between self-care and self-connection, and they are thinking, well, this is just a semantic thing. Okay, so she's created some, like a different term for this, but fundamentally, right, I still need to meditate and journal and go to the gym. Like, how is this any different?
It's a good question. One, I think like one of the big differences is for me the amount of time that I feel I need to carve out for it. So I do it in minutes rather than hours. And I think the biggest thing is like actually tuning in to it's tuning into ourselves in a way that like I don't know. I think I always thought of journaling as like this beautiful poetic process had to be happening. And maybe you're someone listening to this is like, all right, check done. Like I already have that conversation with myself in the journaling. Um, that's a really good question. It's like helping me to boil it down because it is very different and it's tricky for me in this moment to verbalize how it's different. It's a matter of like going inward instead of external. Self-care in my mind is external and self-connection is internal. It's distracting ourselves out versus going into the fire and the flame. It's feeling something and knowing there's safeness and allowing it to be felt rather than avoiding it, right? It's alchemizing our emotions. It's sitting with them long enough to learn from them and then moving in a way that helps transmute them. So, like, if I get really angry, I know I'm going to have a kick ass workout. But first, I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to sit with it while it's so uncomfortable and fiery and be like, what is it here? Like, what needs to change? I think the difference is that, like, the call and response creates a massive trajectory shift in your life that results in so much more like calm, confidence, clarity, and alignment. You start to live a life that's true to you because you're tapped into your desires again.
What are some of the biggest tools that you use to help women make this transition?
So one of them is this book club that I have. And I think that books are the gateway to connection. I think they are one of the most powerful anchor tools for someone going from all the do into having a moment to just be. Because I think if we can just, I encourage women to make two swaps, give me 2 minutes on each. Like that's it. That'll make shifts and changes. And if you can do 5 minutes, that's even better. And if you can do 20, that's great. But one is changing your lighting in the morning at night, which we briefly talked about, because it helps you stay in a different brainwave state, which basically means it helps you stay connected to your subconscious and like those under the water iceberg true stories. And then the other one is swap your phone and swap scrolling with a book because, you know, from like literally from our brain, when we desperately need and crave a break in our day, and I've definitely done this subconsciously. I go to grab my phone because I'm like, I just need, it's a busy day. Like I just need like to have a little chill moment. You grab your phone. Your phone does the complete opposite to your brain. That's why we actually never feel better. It completely overstimulates it. Whereas a book, literally from a neurological perspective, when you move your eyes across a page and then back to the beginning of the line, it's a functional neurological exercise. It's called pursuits and saccades. I used to do this with the kids in my practice that were labeled ADHD. It literally activates part of your brain. It's called the corpus callosum. It doesn't really matter. What it means is it balances out both hemispheres of your brain and it gets you back into your body. And so that's why, like, if we pick up a book for 2 minutes versus picking up our phone, we're in a completely different state after that 2 minutes. Our nervous system is relaxed. We literally feel like we just had like a little bit of a snip of like a spa day, and then we can go back into our day. And it also, I do a lot with like this brain flow resource I have where I call it brain syncing or regulating your rhythm. We live so much of our day in go, go, go mode. That's your beta brain waves. And I talk about your beta brain waves like a person. She's like a marathon runner. But what happens is if we run our marathon runner from the time we wake up until the time we go to bed, things aren't going to feel so good. And so we need to take like these water breaks, and we also need to let her warm up before her day, and we need to let her wind down after her day. So I have these other resources on like the importance of theta and alpha. They're these beautiful brainwave states that we skip over first thing in the morning because we think we're not doing anything and we're not being effective, when in reality, like people meditate for years to try to achieve alpha. It's a flow state. And we can literally train that in the morning. We're like already in it. And if we just maximize that time for even 5 minutes by sitting or journaling or lighting a candle, like it's going to hardwire us for peak performance later in our day. It's going to allow us to get stuff done, like check off the to-do list, but then feel calm and regulated by the time we're done. So I know that's a lot of information. There's a lot of tools. But just going back, I think the book in hand is like one of the greatest tools for men and women, but especially for my ladies. Like pack one in your purse, have it with you all the time because you will start to realize all the pockets of time you actually do have, you're just spending it on your phone, right? You can get through a book a month by reading 5 pages a day.
And this is, as I understand it, a book club, a women's book club, where you guys are having meetings and discussions about the books. Is that accurate?
Yep. So each month I pick a transformational nonfiction book. So these are all like self-empowerment, self-help. I don't like that word. I like literature of possibility books. And then I actually bring in the author as well.
Hmm.
And so I do a podcast with the author and I invite the community in. They're in the recording studio on Zoom or wherever. And then they get to ask their questions for like the last 15 minutes of the call. And then we'll often pair it with like an experience during the month. So like one month I did a journaling journey and we journaled together in the morning and like reported back to each other how it was going. What challenges did you experience? Right? So it becomes like this village and tribe that we're told that we need, but maybe we don't have. Like
Mhm.
maybe we've got girlfriends, but maybe we don't have like these kind of girlfriends in our lives. So it's just this beautiful way to create that collaboration between women who want to grow and expand and evolve and change.
There is I love what you just said, and there's a concept, it was coined by Daniel Lieberman, who is an evolutionary biologist from Harvard. I think he's the head of the evolutionary biology department there. He wrote a phenomenal book. He's written a few great books. A phenomenal book, maybe about 10 years ago, called The Story of the Human Body. And there's a lot of great stuff in the book. One of them is pointing out very in a very compelling way that most of the modern chronic disease burden in us westernized humans living in developed countries are diseases of civilization or diseases of evolutionary mismatch. They are diseases driven by the mismatch between our biological design and our modern environment and way of life. And he coins another concept in the book that is a really important concept in my view and rarely gets talked about, and it's called disevolution. And the idea of this concept of disevolution, if you think of like dysfunction or dysregulation, disevolution, DYS, is essentially it is a phenomenon where you have a problem. It could be a health problem, it could be a problem of human happiness, that is the result of a mismatch between our biological design and our modern environment and way of life. And you develop a solution for it, but the solution that you develop for it doesn't actually address the underlying root causes of that problem, but it does accomplish some palliative effect, some ability to reduce the suffering or the symptoms associated with it. So let's imagine that I have, to paint this picture in a simple way, let's imagine that I sit down in a chair for most of my day, day after day, for many, many years or decades. And as a result of this, I develop extremely weak legs where it's difficult for me to get up and down from the ground. It's difficult for me to walk up a flight of stairs or walk up a hill and so on. And someone says to me, well, I've got the perfect solution for you. Here are these crutches, or here's this electric wheelchair that will make it so much easier for you to get around, right? And maybe it does, right? It does. Oh, wow, this is really comfortable. I mean, it's so much easier. I don't have to use my legs anymore. My legs aren't being strained. But the problem is those kinds of solutions that didn't address the underlying root causes actually, paradoxically, not only do they not solve the problem, but they actually, over the long term, promote a worsening of the problem, not only for that individual, but for subsequent generations as well. And this problem, if you understand this concept is pervasive all across modern society, and especially in our current medical paradigm that focuses on drug solutions to health problems rather than addressing the underlying causes, which, as I just said, most of our chronic disease burden is driven by this mismatch, evolutionary mismatch. So if you don't solve the problem at that level, you are sort of by definition creating a disevolutionary trajectory where we are actually worsening this problem for ourselves and subsequent generations. What I like about the frame that you've presented here, and then the approach that you're taking, is that it is not disevolutionary. It's actually correcting. It's working to correct some of the underlying root causes of these problems that modern humans, modern women are experiencing by doing something that directly fosters human connection and tribe.
Yeah, I'm glad you see it that way because that's exactly how big it is for me in my mind. I'm here, my calling is as a cycle breaker, and I think a lot of us know that to be true for ourselves. I think that's why we're out here being who we're being. And, I think as women and as men today, we sit in a really interesting spot because our dads, our moms maybe inspired us and taught us certain things. And then just like they did before from their generations before them, like you always want to do better for your kids, right? And I'll speak for the women. I know that the men have their challenges too. And I think for a lot of us women, it's like we were empowered and inspired that we could do anything. And like I still see this in quotes, on socials and stuff today. It's like it's so important for me to role model for my daughter that she can do anything. And I see that and I'm like, no, like that she can be anyone. That it's, I think a lot of us are so stuck in this cycle of doing because it's what we learned and what we watched and we're in it and we're like, this sucks. Like this isn't what I thought it was. I thought I was going to be empowered, in this state of like I can go out there and do anything. I can have the career, I can have the family. Like it's too much. And so I think it's our job as women today to role model for our daughters the beingness, right? Like one of the biggest things that I want my daughter to take away from our time together is to learn how to take care of her body and soul by watching me take care of mine.
Mm.
Right. I shared something on Instagram stories this morning. Like I come out here every morning and I sit, I call this my sit spot right behind me. And I have a red light on and I'm just in quiet or I'm stretching or I'm playing. She's 8 years old and she asks me every night when I'm tucking her in to wake her up at 5:30 with me so she can, we call it meditate, but it like looks like a lot of things. Like this morning we were trying to figure out how to play Chinese jump rope with like threads and string. We're just being.
Mhm.
We are just being before the day starts. And when I see her do that, I'm like, God, if that's the only thing that I pass down to her, like I will feel like I did the greatest service to the next generation. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
There's you just made me think of something. It's like one of the interesting things that, I'm a parent as well. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. Um, and I think one of the things that parents have, I think probably in a lot of countries, maybe most in, actually, now that I think about China, maybe beating us in this regard, but it's very strong in the United States, is like everybody wants their child to be exceptional. Everybody wants their child to be like the best at something or to be ahead of, everybody else. And so, there's this tendency, and even since the time you and I were kids compared to now, there's this like tendency to get kids knowing their letters at an earlier age than ever before and reading earlier than ever before and to be one or two grade levels more advanced than their peers. And and of course there's a beautiful thing behind this too. It's like, I love you, I want you to be successful in the world, I want to help you have a good life. And at the same time, there's another element to it, which is like putting so much pressure on the kid to be more, to do more. And the underlying message that's being communicated in that is like, what you are is not enough. You need to be better than you are. You need to be better than everybody else. And what if the child isn't exceptional at something? What if they, even very, very famous, we know famous stories of like Albert Einstein doing very poorly in math or English, or one of his classes, flunking out of one of his classes. Michael Jordan famously didn't make his high school basketball team. There's like what if we just ease up a little bit with all of that pressure on our kids to be the best or to be more and be exceptional in so many things? What if it needs to be counterbalanced with a sort of communicating like, you are enough, you are loved as you are.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so beautiful. And I think we also need to open up our viewpoint of like what someone can be exceptional at.
Mm,
And speaking for us adults, like we are just little children in bigger bodies. And I read somewhere like if you want to know what you're destined to step into, what is your calling? Watch a child play or ask yourself, what did you do between the ages of 3 and 5? And that will give you an indicator into like what field you would, again, we're putting the mark on like what work should we do, right? But
mm,
every child is exceptional. Every child is exceptional. We're just looking at the wrong measurements, right? Like is I mean, if you see a kid playing with Legos, I think a lot of people don't value how important play is, both for children and as an adult. Like we don't it's like we're looking at test scores and academics and we're putting kids into specialized sports at the age of 4 so that they're good at 5 so that when they're 6 they're good so that they can make it into the middle school team and the high school team. I mean, I watched before we had children, I had kids in my practice that were like 8, 9, 10 years old with overuse injuries because
Mm.
they're specializing in a sport too young. And I've got to be honest, I'm kind of experimenting with our kids and I don't know where it'll turn out, but I love neurology. I love functional neurology. It's one of my favorite things to study and just understanding the human body and how it works. I'm like, I just want my kids to move and play and climb trees and take risks because I think then when they go into a sport, they're going to have all that foundation. And who knows? I might have kids that can't get on any team because of that. But my kids are very healthy. They are very natural learners. I mean, they skateboard, they play soccer, they rock climb, they snowboard. They do everything. And I think that's really important. I think we don't put enough value on play and we don't put enough value on emotional IQ, right? Like, can you regulate? Because that's really more the marker for success later in life. Like, can you regulate yourself? Can you adapt? Because you could put someone in a room who can be like the valedictorian, but maybe can't have a conversation with anyone.
Mm.
Like, what does that serve in the real world? Like, great, you were first chair violin, you got a 5.0 because you were in all honors classes, but maybe when you go to sit for an interview, like you don't have the communication skills,
Hmm.
or you can't thrive in like adaptive situations. I think we just need to broaden the options for what we can be exceptional in.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. If someone is in this state of overwhelm and just has this sort of endless to-do list that they feel they're drowning, in all the stuff they have to do every day, and well, I don't have time to join a book club and and start doing these different tools and journaling and all that stuff. How would you sort of get that person to start thinking differently about managing their time, managing their day?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a really good walkthrough exercise that maybe isn't so fun, but I think it's really important. If someone genuinely feels that way, like as long as they're not just using that as an excuse to stay stuck, right? Because I think people will and do that. But for someone who legitimately feels that way, like take 2, 3 days and write down everything that you do. And I know that's a lot to ask for someone that's doing it all. But then once you have that list, or maybe just create an awareness as you're going through your day, like, what can someone else do that you don't have to do? And this might mean having to be really vulnerable and ask for help, which is really hard for people, right? But to maybe start to practice. Or like, what can you hire out? And maybe even if you're not in a position to spend a lot of money, like, can you get creative? Like, I don't know, in our neighborhood, we have a neighborhood chat on WhatsApp, and there's like a lot of 14, 15-year-olds just looking to make some extra cash. Like, could you pay a teenager to maybe help, like, fold your laundry or do your dishes or like free you up from the things that anybody can do? This is big for me as a mom. Like, if I can pay someone to fold my laundry so that I can fully be with my 14, 12, and 8-year-old when they're home from school, like, that's really, really important to me. And that's very valuable. So I think we start to see like what things can we start to circle? And maybe you don't have a solution yet, but at least then it becomes your lens. It's like anything we focus on, we're going to change and shift. So like stick that paper up on your fridge. What are the things you want to get rid of? What are the things that anyone can do if you could figure out how to pay them? And look at it every day. And probably the solution is going to start to come. Even if it's like 2-minute, 5-minute pockets that you gain, that's a huge win.
Hmm. Dr. Saunders, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think the work that you're doing is wonderful. And I want to ask you if there's any last thing or two that you want to leave people with.
Yeah, thank you. I think in the age of information, podcasts, I have a podcast, you have a podcast. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of podcasts, even books, right? Like in the age of the ability to access information at any time, just make sure that as you're listening to everyone else's voice, to make time and space for your own, right? So you're the most important guide in your life. You are your greatest teacher. You've just got to get tapped back into that. So always create that space to listen to your own self.
Beautiful. And where should people reach out to you if they want to work with you, follow you, join your club? Let
Yeah.
people know
Uh,
whatever they need to know.
okay. My website is drmelissasaunders.com, DR, and then my first and last name.com. There's a tab resources on there. It's got a ton of free resources. Connection code is one that I help walk you through figuring out what is it that you want and desire again to fill these 2 minute pockets with something that actually connects you. I've got a book coming out with Hay House next spring, also called The Connection Code. And I've got a podcast called Be Inspired Mama. It's on YouTube as well. And then I'm always playing on the Instagram, showing the behind the scenes of our life on Be Inspired Mama as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Dr. Saunders. I look forward to our next conversation and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I've loved this conversation.